In this module, we're going to focus on executing a lesson plan. So when you get a lesson plan from a teacher, it's probably going to have instructional goals. So what should students accomplish for that day? Any strategies, instructional strategies or materials that you're going to need, and then what type of assessments that you're going to give those students to ensure that learning has occurred. In order to execute a lesson plan, I've mentioned this so many times already, but it doesn't hurt to mention it one more time. Make sure that you arrive early so you're able to review over the lesson plans, gather materials, and then identify any special accommodations that you may need to give to students. In terms of delivering the lesson plan, you want to maintain any established routines or signals that the teacher has given in the plan, provide concise directions, and constantly ask students questions to check that they are understanding those directions and understanding the lesson materials. What happens if you walk in the classroom and the lesson plans are missing? So it could be an emergency situation. I do not think this is something that happens frequently, but it can happen. The first thing you want to do is search for any emergency lesson plans. Ask the front office for emergency lesson plans. I know when I taught middle school, we were required to at least submit 5 days worth of emergency plans in case we had to leave suddenly. You want to ask students what were they working on yesterday. They are your #1 source of information about what they're doing in the classroom. Establish order from the get-go. Have them work on something quietly while you come up with a plan. Go ahead and define those behavioral expectations that you know that you're going to set. And then you want to deploy your No Prep Universal Survival Kit. What were those activities I had in my back pocket? If they are educational, that would be great. If not, you do want to just make sure that you are, you don't want any downtime in your class because that's when behavioral problems usually exist. And then you want to leave a detailed note explaining, any deviation and then the outcomes of that lesson that you implemented. In terms of instructional strategies, there are quite a few listed in your reading from this week, but just to touch base on some of them, using visual aids helps the majority of students. Peer teaching, so having them work together, making any real-world connections. If you can make it fun, that's going to engage students. So can you do some kind of interactive, fun review of the content that was covered? Asking open-ended questions, the why, how, and then use it make it fun. So can you come up with a mnemonic device or an acronym to help students memorize any material that they've covered for that day? In terms of modifications, you do want to make sure that if you have students in your class that have IEPs or 504 plans, that you are adhering to those accommodations. So this could be something like extra time, giving simplified instructions, or they may have assistive technology usage. There's multiple other accommodations that these students may have. Again, another reason why you want to arrive early to review over that. For all students, there's different learning modalities. Some students learn better visually, some students learn better auditory or kinesthetic. When you're providing direction or providing instruction, just keep in mind to, vary the way that you're given those instructions. Maybe writing them on the board, or again, auditory, or if you can do anything with movement, especially with younger grade levels, that's going to help students with remembering. If you are substituting in a special education environment, some key things to remember. Arrive early to review over the students' IEPs, and also too if students have any medical needs. Your paraprofessionals in that classroom, that is your go-to. That is your team. They already know the routine. They know the students. So make sure to ask questions and rely on them for support. Routine is going to be king in this classroom. You want to strictly adhere to schedule because that's going to reduce anxiety for your students. You want to be positive, acknowledge and reinforce positive behaviors, and then monitor students for overstimulation. That could be excessive noise or maybe the lights. If there's a quiet space in the classroom, make sure to utilize those. Just some strategies that you can implement just based on grade level. Again, this could be maybe during downtime, or if you do encounter that situation where you walk in and there's no lesson plan, you could do things like the communal story, doing a descriptive story, a read aloud from a book in the teacher's collection is great with elementary students. Some active activities, mirroring is a fun game, touch the rainbow. Any dancing or movement can go a long way to reward students, or again, if there's downtime in the class. And then elementary students definitely love games. There's so many games if you just do a simple Google search of elementary school games that you can play in the classroom. But Doggy Doggy is a fun one, and then Spaceman is another fun game that you could play with students. For middle school students, again, if you have downtime, 20 questions, hot seat, and that's a fun one to do with vocabulary words. Again, anytime you can make it educational. Pass the Chicken, Telephone is a game that has been around forever. Middle grade students love Silent Ball. I used to play that with my students as well as a reward if they had done well in the lesson. And then songwriting. Or read alouds too is a great strategy for middle school students as well. For high school students, cognitive challenges, so doing like an improv game, the ABC game, especially if it's about a topic that they're learning in the class. Celebrity. You can have them, if there's 20 or 30 minutes, have them write a letter to their future self, design their dream home or an advice column, and then just some mindfulness activities as well. This was all part of that survival kit that we talked about in the first module. You want to come prepared with some type of activities that you could implement, again, if there's no lesson or if there is some downtime. A physical kit, so you can bring something like a small plastic ball to do silent ball, a timer or stopwatch if you're planning to play games, index cards, pencils, worksheets, Mad Libs, or short story prompts if you just have a few of those if you want them to do a writing activity. Universal games that you can use for any grade level, Four Corners, charades, story starters, or even self-essays. At the end of the day, again, we've mentioned this already, but make sure you leave a detailed note. Keep in mind, you are to follow the lesson plan. So I want to make that very clear. I'm mentioning all these strategies and activities, but if you're following the lesson plan and that teacher has done a good job with writing the lesson plan, you really shouldn't have any downtime. You should just follow it step by step. But if something did come up, you want to make sure that you want to list any activities that were maybe skipped over for the sake of time, and then you want to note any activities that were completed. Behavioral notes, I would always start with the positive first before giving any concerns, and then identify students that were helpful to you that day. We mentioned this earlier on in this class, but always clean up the classroom, and then always keep things organized, collect the work neatly, label it clearly on the student's desk or on the teacher's desk. If you have any questions at all about implementing the lesson plan, do not hesitate to reach out to me.